Captain Vorgathon Crimplebine was having what could only be described as the worst day of his extraordinarily long life when his ship's navigation computer decided to hiccup at precisely the wrong moment. The Galactic Survey vessel Improbable Hypothesis was supposed to be cataloguing dead rocks in Sector 7 Zeta. Nobody cares about this place, but instead found itself hurtling toward a small blue marble that absolutely positively should not have been there according to every star chart in existence. "Captain!" shrieked Navigation Officer Flibber Noodlethwaite, his 3 eye stalks writhing in what could generously be called panic. The quantum displacement matrix just had what I can only describe as a mechanical nervous breakdown. Vorgathon's purple tentacles twitched with annoyance. In his 400 years of space travel, he had never encountered a situation quite like this. The ship's computer, which had the unfortunate habit of developing personality disorders during long voyages, was now cheerfully announcing their arrival at coordinates that didn't exist. "Welcome to your destination," chirped the computer in its insufferably pleasant voice. "Please note that your current location appears to be completely impossible according to all known laws of physics and cartography. Have a wonderful day." Dr. Plinkerton Bumblefrizz, the ship's science officer, was frantically pressing buttons that seemed to mock him with their complete lack of response. "Sir, this is unprecedented. According to our sensors, we've stumbled upon a Class M planet with, oh my stars, liquid water." The revelation hit the bridge like a metaphorical brick to a metaphorical face. In the known galaxy, finding a planet with liquid water was like finding a needle in a haystack, except the haystack was the size of several trillion solar systems, and the needle was invisible. "What are the odds of this happening?" demanded Vorgathon, his voice reaching frequencies that made nearby equipment vibrate sympathetically. "Approximately 42 billion to 1 against, sir," replied the computer helpfully, "which, statistically speaking, means it should be happening right now." Communications specialist Gertrude Flapperwonk was monitoring the planet's electromagnetic emissions with growing bewilderment. "Captain, I'm detecting radio signals from the surface. They appear to be broadcasts of some kind." "Broadcasts?" Vorgathon's voice cracked like a teenage Zephyrian going through molt. You mean there's intelligent life down there?" "Well," Gertrude said thoughtfully, "I'm receiving transmissions about something called reality television, so the intelligent part might be debatable." The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle humming of life support systems and the occasional beep from instruments that seemed to be having their own existential crisis. First contact protocols had been drilled into every member of the Galactic Survey Corps, but those protocols assumed you would actually be looking for intelligent life, not accidentally crash into it during what was supposed to be a routine rock cataloging mission. "Sir," whispered Dr. Bumblefrizz, "what exactly do we do now?" Vorgathon considered this question with the gravity it deserved, which was to say, quite a lot of gravity indeed. Discovering intelligent life was supposed to be a career-defining moment, the sort of thing that got you monuments and possibly your own chapter in galactic history books. Discovering it by accident while lost was the sort of thing that got you court-martialed and possibly fed to the probability worms of Deneb 7. "We observe," he declared with more confidence than he felt. "We study, we learn, and we do not let anyone back at headquarters know we got here by taking a wrong turn at the Crab Nebula." The crew nodded in unanimous agreement, mostly because admitting to gross navigational incompetence was slightly less appealing than facing whatever was waiting for them on the mysterious blue planet below. "Flibber, take us into orbit. Stealthed approach. The last thing we want is to panic the natives." As the Improbable Hypothesis descended toward Earth, none of its crew could have predicted that they were about to encounter the most dangerous, unpredictable, and absolutely terrifying species in the known galaxy. They thought they were studying primitive savages. They were wrong, very wrong. The initial scans were, to put it mildly, confusing. Dr. Bumblefrizz found himself staring at readouts that made absolutely no sense according to established xenobiology protocols. Captain, the dominant species appears to be bipedal, carbon-based, and they seem to have mastered fire. Fire? Gasped Gertrude. But that's impossible. Only the most advanced civilizations learn to harness combustion. There's more, Bumblefrizz continued, his voice growing increasingly high-pitched. They've somehow managed to split the atom, travel to their moon, and, oh dear Zorbak, they've invented something called social media. The implications were staggering. Any species capable of nuclear fission and space travel should have been catalogued centuries ago. The fact that they had remained hidden until now was either the most remarkable oversight in galactic history or something far more sinister. Vorgathon ordered a closer examination of the planet's surface. What they discovered defied every assumption they had ever made about primitive civilizations. "Captain," reported Flibber, "I'm detecting massive cities, complex transportation networks, and what appears to be a global communication grid. These aren't savages living in caves. These are... What, Flibber? These are what? These are the most dangerous creatures I've ever encountered." The bridge erupted in nervous chatter. Dangerous creatures were exactly what the Galactic Survey Corps was trained to avoid. Their mission was to catalogue safe civilizations, preferably ones that hadn't figured out how to make weapons more sophisticated than pointy sticks. "Define dangerous," Vorgathon said carefully. Dr. Bumblefrizz cleared his throat nervously. "Well, sir, according to my analysis, these humans, as they call themselves, have managed to weaponize practically everything. They turn metal into projectiles, chemicals into explosives, and atoms into unthinkable devastation. Furthermore," added Gertrude, "their entertainment seems to consist primarily of watching each other engage in ritualized combat, and their literature is filled with stories about conquering the galaxy." Vorgathon's tentacles went rigid with terror. Galactic conquest was typically the hobby of species that had been spacefaring for millennia, not planet-bound primitives who had only recently discovered fire. "Unless... Are you telling me," he said slowly, "that we've stumbled upon a species of natural-born warriors who haven't yet figured out how to leave their planet?" The silence that followed was the kind of silence that speaks volumes, mainly because it was filled with the unspoken realization that they had made a very big mistake. "Permission to suggest immediate retreat, sir," squeaked Navigation Officer Flibber. "Granted," Vorgathon practically shouted. "Set course for anywhere that isn't here. Maximum warp. Actually beyond maximum warp. Invent new levels of warp if necessary." But as Flibber frantically began inputting escape coordinates, the ship's computer chose that moment to deliver what could only be described as the worst possible news at the worst possible time. "I'm terribly sorry to interrupt," the computer announced cheerfully, "but it appears our quantum flux inhibitors have chosen this moment to go on strike. We are temporarily unable to achieve faster-than-light travel." The bridge fell silent again, except for the sound of Vorgathon's tentacles slapping against his forehead in a gesture that transcended species barriers. "How long until repairs?" he asked through gritted teeth. "Oh, roughly 72 hours, the computer replied, "unless something goes wrong, in which case it could be considerably longer. Statistics suggest there's an 87% chance that something will go wrong." 72 hours. 72 hours orbiting a planet full of weapon-obsessed primates who had mastered nuclear physics and space travel. 72 hours praying that the terrifying creatures below wouldn't notice an alien spaceship hanging around their planet like an unwelcome dinner guest. "Sir," whispered Dr. Bumblefrizz, "I think we should continue our observations. For science." Vorgathon stared at his science officer with the expression of someone who had just been asked to juggle live grenades while riding a unicycle. "For science? Think about it, Captain. When will we ever get another chance to study a species like this? These humans are unique. They're simultaneously primitive and advanced, peaceful and warlike, intelligent and completely insane. Against his better judgment, which was screaming at him to fake his own death and hide in the cargo bay, Vorgathon found himself nodding. They were stuck here anyway, and returning to headquarters with a report that said found scary monkey people, ran away immediately, would probably not advance his career prospects. "Fine," he said, "but we maintain maximum stealth, minimum contact, and if anything goes wrong, we blame it on equipment malfunction." What followed was the most intensive 72 hours of xenoanthropological research in galactic history, and definitely the most bizarre. The crew of the improbable hypothesis discovered that humans were not just dangerous, they were impossibly dangerous in ways that defied all logic and reason. "Captain," reported Dr. Bumblefrizz during their second day of observation, "I've been monitoring their global communication networks, and I've made a disturbing discovery. More disturbing than yesterday's revelation that they voluntarily climb mountains for fun." "Yes, sir." "They appear to engage in something called extreme sports, which consists of deliberately putting themselves in mortal danger for the purpose of entertainment." Vorgathon's headache was reaching epic proportions. "You mean they deliberately risk death for recreational purposes?" "That's not even the worst part, sir. They've also invented something called horror movies, where they pay money to be frightened, and roller coasters, which are mechanical devices designed to simulate fatal accidents." Communication specialist Gertrude looked up from her console with wide eyes. "I've been monitoring their news broadcasts, and apparently they engage in something called politics, which seems to involve groups of humans attempting to convince other humans that their particular method of organizing society is superior, often through the use of loud noises." "Loud noises?" Vorgathon's voice reached frequencies that made nearby metal objects ring sympathetically. "Yes, sir. And when that doesn't work, they sometimes resort to what they call elections, which is a form of ritualized combat where victory is determined by counting pieces of paper." The more they learned about humans, the more convinced the crew became that they had stumbled upon the most terrifying species in the galaxy. These weren't just warriors. They were warriors who had turned survival into an art form. "Sir," said Dr. Bumblefrizz on their third day, "I've completed my analysis of human physiology, and the results are, well, they're absolutely horrifying." Vorgathon braced himself. "How horrifying?" "They're persistence hunters, sir. They don't have claws or fangs or natural armor. Instead, they simply refuse to stop. They can literally run their prey to death through sheer stubborn determination. That's impossible. Furthermore, they have this thing called adrenaline that makes them stronger and faster when they're in danger. They actually become more dangerous when they're scared." Vorgathon's tentacles were now tied in knots of pure anxiety. "What kind of evolutionary pressure creates a species that gets more dangerous when threatened?" "The kind that produces apex predators, sir," Bumblefrizz replied grimly. "And that's not all. They've also developed something called pack bonding, which means they form emotional attachments to practically everything." "Everything?" "Everything, sir. Other humans, animals, inanimate objects, abstract concepts, fictional characters. I monitored one human who spent 6 hours crying over a story about a robot that learned to love. The bridge was silent, except for the gentle humming of life support and the occasional whimper from various crew members as they contemplated the implications of what they were learning. "Captain," said Gertrude quietly, "I think we need to face the possibility that we've discovered something unprecedented in galactic history." "What's that?" "A species that's simultaneously the most dangerous and most emotionally unstable creatures in the known universe. They're capable of incredible violence, but they also rescue injured animals and cry at sad movies." "That makes no sense." "None of it makes sense, sir. They live on a planet that's actively trying to kill them. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, diseases, poisonous animals, and their response is to thrive. They've spread to every continent, adapted to every climate, and turned survival into a competitive sport. Vorgathon was beginning to understand why no one had catalogued humans before. Any sensible survey crew would have taken one look at this planet and marked it "Do Not Approach" in large, friendly letters. "Sir," said Navigation Officer Flibber hesitantly, "repairs are almost complete. We can leave in approximately 6 hours." For the first time in 3 days, Vorgathon felt something approaching relief. They would escape with their lives, file their report, and let someone else figure out what to do about the terrifying monkey people of Sol System. That's when the proximity alarms started screaming. "Captain!" shouted Gertrude, her voice climbing to frequencies that made nearby equipment vibrate in sympathy. "I'm detecting multiple spacecraft approaching our position." Human spacecraft? Vorgathon's tentacles went rigid with terror. "No, sir. These are Galactic Confederation vessels, 3 cruisers and a battleship." The bridge erupted in chaos as crew members ran around in circles, bumped into each other, and generally behaved like people who had just realized they were about to be caught red-handed doing something they absolutely should not have been doing. "How did they find us?" demanded Vorgathon. "Unknown, sir," replied Flibber. "But they're demanding immediate surrender and preparation for boarding." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Vorgathon Crumplethwaite of the Galactic Confederation Navy. His expression suggested that he had not traveled all this way to deliver good news. "Captain Vorgathon Crimplebine of the survey vessel Improbable Hypothesis," the Admiral's voice boomed across the bridge. "You are hereby charged with gross violation of First Contact Protocols, unauthorized xenological research, and failure to report discovery of intelligent life." Vorgathon's tentacles drooped with defeat. "Admiral, I can explain." "Explain. You've been spying on an uncontacted civilization for 3 days. Do you have any idea what kind of diplomatic incident this could cause? But, sir, we discovered them by accident." "Accident? You accidentally spent 72 hours conducting detailed observations of their society, culture, and technology?" When put that way, it did sound rather damning. Vorgathon was trying to formulate a response that wouldn't result in him being court-martialed and fed to something unpleasant when Dr. Bumblefrizz stepped forward. "Admiral," he said carefully, "before you arrest us, you should know that we've made a discovery of unprecedented importance to galactic security." Admiral Crumplethwaite's expression suggested that he was not in the mood for excuses, but professional curiosity won out over bureaucratic anger. "What kind of discovery?" "Sir, the dominant species on this planet represents the most significant threat to galactic peace and stability ever encountered." "Threat? They haven't even achieved interstellar travel." "Yet, sir. But when they do—" Dr. Bumblefrizz paused dramatically. "Admiral, these humans are natural-born warriors with an instinctive understanding of warfare, technology, and survival that surpasses anything in our databases. They've weaponized their entire planet." The Admiral's expression shifted from anger to concern. "Explain." "They live on a world that's constantly trying to kill them, and their response has been to become the most dangerous predators in their local ecosystem. They hunt for sport, fight for entertainment, and turn every challenge into a competition. Furthermore," added Gertrude, "their capacity for violence is matched only by their capacity for emotional attachment. They form bonds with everything they encounter, which means they'll fight to the death for causes that more logical species would simply abandon." Admiral Crumplethwaite was beginning to look less like an angry bureaucrat and more like someone who had just realized the magnitude of the situation. "Are you telling me that there's an entire planet of warrior poets down there?" "Worse, sir," said Vorgathon, finding his voice. "They're warrior poets who haven't figured out they're supposed to be the galaxy's dominant military force. They think they're just normal." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that indicated minds being blown and paradigms being shifted. The discovery of humans wasn't just a first contact situation, it was a potential extinction event for every other species in the galaxy. Admiral, Dr. Bumblefrizz continued, we estimate that once humans achieve interstellar travel, they'll spread throughout the galaxy within 500 years, and based on their history, they'll do it by being helpful. Helpful? Yes, sir. They'll want to make friends, share technology, solve problems, and generally make everything better. They'll be so enthusiastic about helping that they'll accidentally become the dominant species without even trying. The Admiral's face had gone through several shades of color that didn't exist in most species' visual spectrum. You're telling me that we've discovered a species of accidental conquerors? That's exactly what we're telling you, sir, Vorgathon replied. And the worst part is, they'll feel terrible about it. The bridge of the Admiral's ship had gone completely silent. Even the background hum of life support seemed muted, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Sir, said the Admiral's communication officer, I'm receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. A transmission? From the humans? Yes, sir. It appears to be directed at us specifically. Dilsum. The main view screen shifted to show a middle-aged human woman sitting behind what appeared to be a desk made of wood, which was apparently a popular construction material on their planet. She was smiling, which Dr. Bumblefrizz had learned was a human expression that could indicate anything from friendliness to impending violence. Hello there, the human said cheerfully. I'm Ambassador Patricia Whistlebottom of the United Nations Office for Extraterrestrial Affairs. We've been monitoring your ships for the past several hours, and we thought it might be time for a proper introduction. The collective sound of jaws dropping was audible throughout both ships. You've been monitoring us? Admiral Crumplethwaite sputtered. Oh yes, Ambassador Whistlebottom replied. We noticed your ship 3 days ago, but we didn't want to be rude and interrupt what appeared to be important scientific observations. We figured you'd introduce yourselves when you were ready. Dr. Bumblefrizz leaned over to Vorgathon. Sir, they knew we were here the entire time. Furthermore, the ambassador continued, we've prepared a small welcome gift as a gesture of friendship. We understand that first contact situations can be somewhat awkward, so we've put together a care package with some samples of human culture, technology, and cuisine. Cuisine, whispered Gertrude. They want to feed us. We're also very excited to learn about your civilization, Ambassador Whistlebottom went on. We have so many questions. What's your home planet like? How does faster-than-light travel work? Do you have any interesting sports? We'd love to organize some friendly competitions. Admiral Crumplethwaite looked like someone who had just been invited to participate in his own execution. Friendly competitions. Oh yes, we have this wonderful game called football. Well, we call it soccer in some places, but that's a long story, and we think you might enjoy it. It's quite simple, really. You just try to get a ball into a goal without using your hands. Without using their hands? Flibber whispered in horror. What kind of species deliberately handicaps itself for entertainment? The ambassador was still talking. We've also prepared demonstrations of human music, art and literature. We have this fascinating genre called science fiction, where we imagine what contact with alien species might be like. It's quite fun, really, though I suspect some of our authors got things rather wrong. Sir, Dr. Bumblefrizz said quietly to Admiral Crumplethwaite, I recommend we accept their invitation. Are you insane? Think about it, sir. They've demonstrated that they detected our stealth technology, tracked our movements, and prepared for first contact without showing any signs of fear or aggression. They're either the most advanced species we've ever encountered, or they're so dangerous that they don't need to be afraid of us. Or both, added Vorgathon helpfully. Admiral Crumplethwaite stared at the screen, where Ambassador Whistlebottom was still cheerfully explaining various aspects of human culture with the enthusiasm of someone who had been waiting their entire life for this moment. Very well, he said finally. Ambassador Whistlebottom, we accept your invitation for cultural exchange. Wonderful, the ambassador beamed. We'll prepare a landing site at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Don't worry about atmospheric compatibility. We've taken the liberty of analyzing your ship's emissions, and we've prepared appropriate accommodations. The transmission ended, leaving both alien ships floating in space, with their crews trying to process what had just happened. "Sir," said Vorgathon's communication specialist Gertrude, "they analyzed our emissions. That means they reverse-engineered our atmospheric requirements from our exhaust," Dr. Bumblefrizz explained. "In other words, they figured out what we breathe by studying what we throw away. That's impossible." "Sir," said Admiral Crumplethwaite's science officer, "I've been running calculations, and I believe the humans may have been expecting us." "Expecting us? How could they be expecting us?" "Unknown, sir, but their response time was too fast for a civilization that supposedly never encountered aliens before. Either they're remarkably adaptable, or they've been preparing for this scenario for some time." 6 hours later, representatives from both alien ships found themselves sitting in what humans called a conference room in a building that humans called the United Nations. The room was decorated with flags from various human nations, which apparently were subdivisions of their planet based on geographical and cultural differences. Ambassador Whistlebottom was there, along with several other humans, including General Michael Sledgehammer O'Reilly, Dr. Elizabeth Quantum Mechanics, which was apparently her actual name, and Professor Harold Whatnot of the Department of Xenolinguistics. "Welcome to Earth," Ambassador Whistlebottom said warmly. "We're absolutely delighted to meet you. This is such an exciting day for our species." Admiral Crumplethwaite cleared his throat nervously. "Ambassador, we must confess that our presence here was somewhat accidental." "Oh, we know," she replied cheerfully. "Your navigation error was quite obvious from your approach vector. Wrong turn at the Crab Nebula, wasn't it?" The silence that followed was the kind of silence that indicated minds being boggled beyond their normal capacity for boggling. "How did you know that?" Vorgathon demanded. Professor Whatnot smiled. "We've been monitoring galactic radio transmissions for decades. Your distress signal when your navigation computer malfunctioned was quite clear, even though it was in a language we'd never heard before." "You've been monitoring galactic transmissions?" "Oh, yes. We've catalogued over 3,000 different species based on their communications. We were wondering when someone would finally drop by for a visit." Dr. Bumblefrizz was making notes at a speed that suggested his writing implement might catch fire from friction. "You catalogued us?" "Well, not specifically you," Dr. Quantum Mechanics replied, "but we identified the Galactic Confederation about 15 years ago. Quite an impressive organization, really. We've been particularly interested in your approach to interstellar trade agreements." "You've been studying our trade agreements?" "Among other things, we found your tax code fascinating from an anthropological perspective, very telling about a species' social priorities, tax codes." General O'Reilly leaned forward. "What we're really interested in is your military technology, not to copy it, you understand, but to make sure our defensive systems are compatible. We wouldn't want any unfortunate misunderstandings if we ever need to fight alongside you." "Fight alongside us?" "Well, naturally. Any species advanced enough for interstellar travel must face similar threats. We figure it's only a matter of time before we encounter something that wants to eat everyone, and when that happens, we'll need to work together." The alien delegation exchanged glances that conveyed volumes of information, most of it along the lines of "we're doomed" and "I told you so." "Ambassador," Admiral Crumplethwaite said carefully, "may I ask how long your species has been preparing for contact with galactic civilization?" "Oh, about 60 years, give or take," she replied casually. "Ever since we figured out radio astronomy. We realized it was only a matter of time before we met our neighbors, so we thought we should be ready." "Ready how?" "Well, we established the Office for Extraterrestrial Affairs, developed first contact protocols, learned several galactic languages, and prepared contingency plans for various scenarios. We also stockpiled coffee." "Coffee?" "It's a caffeinated beverage. We figured any civilized species would appreciate good coffee. Would you like some?" Before anyone could answer, she was pouring dark liquid from a thermal container into small cups. The smell was actually quite pleasant, Dr. Bumblefrizz noted, though he wasn't sure if that made the situation better or worse. The thing is, Ambassador Whistlebottom continued as she served coffee, we've been ready for this conversation for quite some time. What we weren't prepared for was how nice you all are. Nice? Oh yes, we expected aliens to be either hostile conquerors or completely incomprehensible. We never imagined you'd be so similar to us. You explore, you study, you make mistakes, you get embarrassed when you're caught doing something awkward. It's really quite endearing. Vorgathon accepted a cup of coffee and took a tentative sip. It was actually quite good, which somehow made everything more terrifying. Ambassador, he said slowly, what exactly do you think happens next? Well, she said thoughtfully, we'd like to apply for membership in the Galactic Confederation, if you'll have us. We understand there's probably a process, paperwork, that sort of thing. We're quite good with paperwork. The alien delegation stared at her with expressions that suggested their understanding of the universe had just been fundamentally altered. You want to join us? Of course. We're all sapient species trying to make our way in a vast and mysterious universe. Why wouldn't we work together? We have resources, technology, and enthusiasm to contribute. Plus, we make excellent coffee. Admiral Crumplethwaite's tentacles were now twisted into shapes that defied several laws of physics. Ambassador, I must point out that joining the Galactic Confederation is a process that typically takes centuries. There are cultural assessments, technological evaluations, diplomatic protocols. Oh, we've already completed most of those, Professor Whatnot interrupted, producing a stack of documents that was approximately the size of a small building. We took the liberty of filling out the standard forms based on information we gathered from monitoring your communications. We weren't sure about some of the legal terminology, but we did our best. Doctor, Bumblefrizz accepted the documents with trembling appendages. A quick scan revealed that they were, indeed, properly completed Galactic Confederation membership applications, filled out in flawless galactic standard, and accompanied by detailed cultural assessments, technological specifications, and economic projections. This is impossible, he whispered. These forms are classified. They're not available to non-member species. We extrapolated them from bureaucratic patterns in your public communications, Dr. Quantum Mechanics explained cheerfully. It wasn't difficult once we understood your administrative structure. Bureaucracy is remarkably consistent across species, we've found. You reverse-engineered our classified documents from public communications. Is that impressive? We weren't sure if it was particularly clever or if we were missing something obvious. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Admiral Crumplethwaite's breathing apparatus, working overtime, and the gentle rustle of papers as Dr. Bumblefrizz continued reading through humanity's membership application. Sir, he whispered to the Admiral, this is the most thorough membership application I've ever seen. They've included technological specifications for theoretical devices they haven't even built yet, detailed plans for integrating their economy with galactic markets, and, oh dear Zorbuk, they've designed their own starships. General O'Reilly smiled. We thought we should be prepared. Can't join a galactic civilization without proper transportation, after all. You've designed starships. Well, we had to, didn't we? We couldn't very well expect you to ferry us around forever. We've prepared manufacturing facilities and trained crews. We should have our first interstellar vessels ready within 6 months. 6 months? Admiral Crumplethwaite's voice reached frequencies that made nearby glassware vibrate. It takes most species decades to develop interstellar capability. Really? We figured it was just a matter of scaling up existing technology and solving the faster-than-light problem. Once we understood the principles from monitoring your communications, the engineering was fairly straightforward. Dr. Quantum Mechanics leaned forward conspiratorially. The tricky part was miniaturizing the quantum flux generators. We had to develop some rather exotic materials, but our manufacturing base is quite adaptable. You've already solved faster-than-light travel? In theory, we haven't tested it yet. We thought it would be rude to go flying around the galaxy without permission. But the mathematics work out beautifully. Vorgathon looked around the room at his fellow aliens, all of whom appeared to be having some form of existential crisis. Ambassador, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. Are you trying to be terrifying? Ambassador Whistlebottom looked genuinely surprised. Terrifying? Why would we be terrifying? We're just trying to be good neighbors. Good neighbors don't usually reverse engineer classified technology and develop interstellar capability in their spare time. Don't they? We thought that was just basic courtesy. You can't really participate in galactic civilization without the proper tools, can you? Professor Whatnot nodded sagely. We've observed that most species seem to struggle with the transition from planetary to galactic thinking. We thought we'd save everyone time by handling the preparations in advance. Besides, added Dr. Quantum Mechanics, we're very good at copying things and making them better. It's sort of our specialty as a species. Oh, the alien delegation exchanged glances that communicated complex concepts, such as we're witnessing the birth of a galactic superpower, and they don't even realize what they've done. Ambassador, Admiral Crumplethwaite said carefully, I think there may be some things about galactic civilization that you don't fully understand. Oh, undoubtedly. That's why we're so excited to learn. What are we missing? Well, for one thing, most species find interstellar travel quite challenging. The technology is complex, the distances are vast, and the resources required are enormous. Yes, we noticed that from your communications. That's why we developed more efficient methods. More efficient methods? Dr. Quantum Mechanics smiled modestly. We managed to reduce the energy requirements by about 90% and increase travel speeds by roughly 300%. It's all about quantum field harmonics. We can show you the equations if you're interested. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that indicated civilizations being accidentally overthrown by enthusiastic neighbors with good intentions. Furthermore, General O'Reilly added, we've prepared several other improvements to standard galactic technology, more efficient life support systems, better communication arrays, improved defensive capabilities. We thought they might be useful contributions to the Confederation. You've improved our defensive capabilities. Well, we noticed some potential vulnerabilities in your standard designs. Nothing major, just a few adjustments that should improve survival rates by 40 or 50% in combat situations. Vorgathon was beginning to understand why no survey crew had ever reported finding humans before. Any reasonable species would have taken one look at this situation and immediately declared the Sol system off-limits to all civilized life. Ambassador, he said weakly, what exactly do you expect will happen when you join the Galactic Confederation? Oh, we're quite excited about that. We're looking forward to sharing resources, exchanging cultural knowledge, participating in scientific research, and helping with whatever challenges the galaxy might face. Helping with challenges. Of course, we assume there must be various problems that require cooperative solutions. Hostile species, natural disasters, resource shortages, that sort of thing. We're very good at solving problems. What makes you think you'd be good at solving galactic problems? Ambassador Whistlebottom looked surprised by the question. Well, we've had quite a lot of practice with planetary problems. How different could it be, really? The answer, as it turned out, was not very different at all. And that was the most terrifying realization of the entire conversation. Within 48 hours of that first meeting, the humans had somehow managed to turn first contact into what could only be described as the most efficiently organized cultural exchange in galactic history. They had prepared translation devices, cultural orientation packages, and what they called tourist guides for visiting aliens. We thought you might like to see some of our cities, Ambassador Whistlebottom explained, as she led the alien delegation through something called Times Square. which appeared to be a concentrated dose of human civilization designed to overwhelm the senses. "This is New York. It's not our biggest city, but it's quite representative of human urban planning." Admiral Crumplethwaite stared up at the towering structures that humans had built for no apparent reason other than to see if they could. "You built these for fun?" "Oh no, these are office buildings. We built them because we needed places to work. The fun buildings are much more impressive." Dr. Bumblefrizz was frantically taking notes while trying not to be trampled by the constant stream of humans who seemed to be in perpetual motion. "Ambassador, how many humans live in this hive?" "About 8.5 million in the city proper, 20 million in the metropolitan area. It's actually quite cozy once you get used to it." 20 million? Vorgathon's voice cracked like a teenager going through malt. "In one city? Oh, that's nothing. Tokyo has nearly 40 million people. We can visit there next week if you'd like." The alien delegation had stopped walking and was now staring at Ambassador Whistlebottom with expressions that suggested their understanding of mathematics had just been fundamentally challenged. "How many humans are there in total?" Admiral Crumplethwaite asked, in a voice that suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Just over 8 billion at last count," she replied cheerfully, "growing at about 75 million per year, though the rate is slowing down as we develop better family planning systems." 8 billion? Is that a lot? We weren't sure how we compared to other species. Dr. Bumblefrizz was doing calculations on his portable computer with the desperate intensity of someone trying to prove that reality was still functioning according to established mathematical principles. "Admiral, most spacefaring civilizations have populations in the hundreds of millions. Some of the larger ones might reach 1 billion. 8 billion is unprecedented," Admiral Crumplethwaite finished grimly. "Oh, we're just getting started," Ambassador Whistlebottom said enthusiastically. "Wait until you see our industrial capacity." The tour that followed was what Dr. Bumblefrizz would later describe in his official report as a systematic demonstration of why humans should probably not be allowed to join galactic civilization for the safety of everyone involved. Indeed, they visited factories that produced goods at rates that defied economic theory, farms that fed billions of people using methods that shouldn't have worked according to agricultural science, and transportation systems that moved millions of humans around their planet every day as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. "The thing about humans," General O'Reilly explained as they watched massive cargo ships moving through something called the Panama Canal, "is that we're really good at scaling things up. If we can do something once, we can usually figure out how to do it 1,000,000 times." "But why would you want to do something 1,000,000 times?" Vorgathon demanded. "Because there are 8 billion of us, and we all need things," the general replied, as if this were perfectly obvious. Professor Whatnot nodded sagely. "It's really just a matter of logistics. Once you have the infrastructure in place, expanding production is simply a question of applying the same principles at larger scales." "You make it sound easy." "Well, it's not easy exactly, but it's not complicated either. You just have to think systematically about resource allocation and process optimization." Dr. Quantum Mechanics smiled. "We've gotten quite good at optimization over the centuries. We've had to. 8 billion people generate a lot of problems that need solving." The alien delegation was beginning to understand that humans didn't just solve problems. They solved problems so efficiently that they created entirely new categories of problems, which they then solved even more efficiently, creating a feedback loop of increasing capability that had been running for thousands of years. "Ambassador," Admiral Crumplethwaite said carefully, "what exactly do you think will happen when your species spreads throughout the galaxy?" "Oh, we've given that quite a lot of thought," she replied enthusiastically. "We figure we'll need about 500 years to establish colonies on suitable planets, develop local infrastructure, and create sustainable interstellar trade networks. We've prepared preliminary surveys of approximately 3,000 star systems that look promising for human settlement. 3,000 star systems? Well, we'll need the room, won't we? 8 billion people take up quite a lot of space, and our population is still growing. Plus, we'll want to establish research stations, mining operations, manufacturing centers, agricultural colonies. It adds up quickly. Doctor. Bumblefrizz was making notes at a speed that suggested his writing implement might achieve faster-than-light velocity through pure desperation. You've already planned galactic colonization? Of course. We couldn't very well join the Galactic Confederation without a proper expansion strategy. It wouldn't be responsible. The word responsible hit the alien delegation like a metaphorical brick to a metaphorical face. They were beginning to realize that humans didn't just do things, they did things responsibly, which somehow made everything infinitely more terrifying. Furthermore, Professor Whatnot added, we've prepared contingency plans for various scenarios we might encounter. Hostile aliens, resource conflicts, natural disasters, technological failures, diplomatic crises. We like to be prepared for every possibility. You have contingency plans for everything? Well, not everything, Ambassador Whistlebottom said modestly. Just the first few hundred scenarios we could think of. We'll develop more as we go along and encounter new situations. General O'Reilly leaned forward conspiratorially. The key is flexibility. You can't predict everything that might happen, but you can prepare systems that adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Adaptive systems. Oh yes. We've learned that rigid planning doesn't work very well when you're dealing with complex situations. It's better to create frameworks that can evolve as conditions change. The alien delegation was now experiencing what could only be described as a collective existential crisis. They had encountered a species that didn't just plan for the future, they planned for multiple possible futures and prepared systems to handle scenarios they hadn't even thought of yet. Ambassador, Vorgathon said in a voice that suggested he was hanging onto sanity by his tentacles, may I ask what you think the Galactic Confederation's response will be to your membership application? Oh, we're quite confident it will be approved, she replied cheerfully. We meet all the standard requirements, and we've prepared comprehensive documentation of our qualifications. Plus, we're bringing some rather useful capabilities to the table. Useful capabilities, Dr. Quantum Mechanics smiled. We've solved several problems that seem to challenge other species: energy efficiency, resource management, rapid technological development, large-scale organization, adaptive planning systems. We think we could make significant contributions to galactic civilization. Admiral Crumplethwaite was beginning to look like someone who had just realized that his quiet retirement was about to be disrupted by the most energetic neighbors in galactic history. Dr. Quantum Mechanics, when you say you've solved these problems, we mean we've developed systematic approaches that consistently produce successful outcomes across a wide range of conditions and scales, she replied, as if she were discussing the weather. Nothing too complicated, really. Just applied problem solving. Applied problem solving. You identify the core issues, analyze the available resources, design efficient solutions, implement them systematically, monitor the results, and adjust as necessary. It's quite straightforward once you get the hang of it. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that indicated entire worldviews being quietly dismantled and rebuilt from scratch. Sir, Doctor, Bumblefrizz whispered to Admiral Crumplethwaite, I don't think they realize what they've accomplished. What do you mean? They've essentially created a civilization-level problem-solving engine that runs on coffee and enthusiasm. They don't think it's remarkable because to them it's just normal. That's what makes them so terrifying, Vorgathon added quietly. They've achieved unprecedented levels of capability, and they think they're just being polite. 3 days later, the alien delegation found themselves back aboard their ships, preparing to return to Galactic Confederation headquarters with what was possibly the most important report in galactic history. They had learned things about humanity that would fundamentally change how every species in the galaxy understood civilization, technology, and the very concept of intelligent life. "Sir, Doctor," Bumblefrizz said as he compiled his final notes, "how exactly do we explain this to headquarters?" Admiral Crumplethwaite stared out at the blue planet that had somehow managed to turn first contact into a cheerful neighborhood welcome party. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that we've discovered a species that accidentally developed the most advanced civilization in galactic history while thinking they were just trying to be good neighbors. And then what happens? Then we find out whether the Galactic Confederation is ready for humans, or whether humans are going to accidentally take over everything while trying to help." As their ships prepared to depart, a final transmission came from Earth. Ambassador Whistlebottom's smiling face appeared on their screens one last time. "Thank you so much for visiting," she said warmly. "We're so excited about joining the galactic community. We've prepared some gifts for you to take back to your colleagues. Samples of human art, music, literature, and of course, plenty of coffee." "Ambassador," Admiral Crumplethwaite said carefully, "I should mention that your membership application will need to be reviewed by the full Confederation Council. The process could take some time." "Oh, we understand completely. Bureaucracy is important. It ensures that everything is done properly. We'll just continue with our preparations while we wait for approval." "Preparations?" "Oh yes, we're very excited about contributing to galactic civilization, so we've started working on some projects we think might be helpful. Improved starship designs, more efficient energy systems, better communication networks, enhanced defensive technologies. We want to be ready to help as soon as we're officially members." The transmission ended, leaving the alien ships floating in space, with their crews trying to process the implications of what they had just heard. "Sir," said Vorgathon's navigation officer Flibber, "did she just say they're improving galactic technology while waiting for their membership to be approved?" "That's exactly what she said," Vorgathon replied grimly. "But that means..." Admiral Crumplethwaite interrupted, "that by the time we return to headquarters with our report, the humans will probably have revolutionized interstellar travel, solved the galaxy's energy crisis, and invented 12 new technologies we haven't even thought of yet." Dr. Bumblefrizz looked up from his final calculations. "Sir, based on their demonstrated capabilities and development rate, I estimate that within one standard galactic year, humans will possess the most advanced technology in known space. And they'll want to share it with everyone," Vorgathon added helplessly. "Because they think that's what good neighbors do," Admiral Crumplethwaite finished. As the alien ships engaged their faster-than-light drives and departed for Galactic Confederation headquarters, none of their crews could have predicted that they were carrying news that would reshape galactic civilization within a decade. They thought they were reporting the discovery of a dangerous new species. What they were actually reporting was the end of the galaxy as they knew it, and the beginning of something unprecedented in cosmic history. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't a species that wants to conquer everything. Sometimes it's a species that wants to help everyone and actually has the capability to do it. 6 months later, when the first human starships appeared in Confederation space, carrying cargo holds full of improved technology and crews eager to make friends, the galaxy learned what it really meant to have Earth as a neighbor. And while most species eventually agreed that it was probably the best thing that had ever happened to galactic civilization, they also quietly acknowledged that the universe had become a much more interesting place. Some accidents, it turns out, are the best kind of destiny.